I can tell you with absolute certainty that there's one thing that's affecting the look of your video and photos more than any other, and it's not a piece of gear, and it's completely free. Hello world, my name is Matt Spa, and that factor that plays the biggest role in the look of anybody's work is not a specific camera or lens or light. It's where those cameras and lenses and lights are placed in relationship to each other. That's the thing that makes the frame. So in this video, I'm gonna break down this simple 2-camera setup, and I'm not gonna focus on gear so much as I'm gonna focus on the relationship of all the different elements that are making this to each other. All the distances and the angles and all that kind of stuff. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, but I haven't been able to sort it all out and create a script. So it's very likely that my brain and my mouth are not gonna be caught up with each other all the way through this. So just bear with me. I have good notes and I'll try to stick to the notes, and we'll soldier on and make this happen. I am sitting at my workbench in my shop, and my bench is 6 foot by 2 foot, and it's about 5 feet off the back wall, and it is parallel to the back wall. And this is gonna be kind of my reference point for most things. We're gonna call this 0 degrees for this exercise anyway. Typically, I would want to be further away from that back wall. I would want to have more control over how much I blur or don't blur that background. But this bench weighs about 400 pounds, and I'm in here by myself today because it's really hot and I just couldn't bring myself to ask anybody to help me. So this is gonna stay where it is, and again, we're gonna soldier on, and it's gonna be awesome. My A camera is 6 feet away from me. It has a 50mm lens on it at f2.8, and if this is 0, it's at 45 degrees from me. It's about at chin height, so A cam. My B camera is about 10 degrees further over, so we're gonna call that 55 degrees. It's got an 85mm lens on it, and it's at f2.2. It is just a smidge higher than my A camera. And the reason for that is that what I want to be able to do in my edit is have my eyes line up when I bounce from one to the other, to the other, to the other. It's just a thing that I like to do. I think it makes your edits a little bit smoother. It's not always possible. It takes me a considerable amount of time to make that happen. But if you can get your interview subject's eyes in the same spot, or at least relatively close, I just think it eases the viewer's ability to watch whatever you're producing. And so there's that. Did I talk about the angle? This is angled, so there's a reason why those aren't at 90 degrees. If they were at 90 degrees, this would be a very flat scene. It just wouldn't look as good. So as you move that stuff over, we start to get more depth in the scene as it goes further back off into infinity back there. So that's, you know, super cool. The B camera is on that side for a reason. It's not an arbitrary decision. My main light, which I'm gonna get to in a second, I promise, is on my right, so camera left. And it's because there is a line between me and the A camera. I'm facing it, everything is very square here. There's this line, and my key light goes on one side, and all my cameras go on the other. And that's just, it's another one of those rules that's really not meant to be broken, because it starts to confuse your audience when you jump from side to side of whatever your primary camera angle is. My key light is a 60-watt LED fixture in a 20-inch lantern-style light box that's got a skirt on the back. It's just a little piece of black fabric. It's duvetine. It keeps that light from making my background too bright. So that's lighting the side of my face. There's a big white piece of 4x4 foam over here that came from a home center. It's insulation. It's 2-inch thick insulation. It's grabbing a little bit of that key light and bouncing it back into the shadows on this side so I don't get too dramatic. We're gonna talk about drama in a minute. It's coming. The fixture is 4 feet away from me, and the bottom of that lantern is right about the top of my head. The color temperature of that light is 5600K, and that's what my cameras are set to. What that's doing is it's making sure that my flesh tones to my camera are accurate, or as, you know, as close as all of that's gonna be. Nothing's perfect. It's a fallen world. There's some yellowish lights in the background, and there's some blue tint in the background. But what I'm trying to do is keep the exposure on myself natural as much as I can. Speaking of background, there is a pair of 2 foot tubes on either side of me. Those are set to a hue of 154, a saturation of 50%, and they're about 4 feet off the wall. This one's 4 feet from me. That one is 6.5, 7 feet from me. They're set at different intensities just so that I could get things kind of even. And all they're doing is giving me some illumination back there. They're lifting the shadows. Here, I'll turn them off and you'll see exactly what they're doing. Background left, background right. So now you can see how much darker the far side of the frame gets without that on. So they're lifting those shadows, obviously, but they're giving me that blue tint back there too. And then to offset the blue, I have the practical light, the little light bulb that's up there. And that light bulb is set to 3000 K. So it's set to a very warm temperature, warmer than what I have for flesh tone. The background is set to a much cooler temperature. That gives some variation back there, creates a little bit of interest. The last light in this setup is what is typically referred to as a kicker. It's just a rim light, and it's kind of lighting this side of my shoulder and my face, but it's also throwing some warm light on this side of my face. So I have that light. It is another 60 watt fixture. It is at 4000 K. So it's not quite as yellow as the practical. It's also creating a little bit of shadow on that back wall, which is interesting. That kicker is just, it's making the practical light, the bulb back there, make a little bit more sense to the viewer. Because now I have this yellow light, which I need to kind of break myself off of the background if it's getting too dark. But now it has a reason to be there. It has a practical light back there that can be kind of simulating whatever this is. I'm gonna turn all of these off and then turn them all back on. And hopefully that will be helpful. We can start with the background lights, then the practical, the kicker, and finally the key. Now I'm going to take all of this, I'm going to try to leave everything where it is, and relight this for a commercial set. So this is a little bit moody, it's a little bit dark, it's a little bit, I would not light a commercial job like this. I would light a narrative job like this or a documentary. But for commercial work, it's all about making people believe you. And so bright lights and nothing to hide and we're all on the level and that kind of stuff is the golden rule for commercial work, at least for me. So I'm gonna try to take all of these same things, same places, relight it for a commercial look and just talk about what I've done differently. And now I'm back with a whole new look. I've made 7 changes to this scene, and I'm gonna split screen it right here for a few seconds, and I'll challenge you, dear viewer, to pause and find all 7. If you want a hint, only 3 of the changes have to do with the lighting. Number 1, I've changed the color of the background lights to be 5600K, matching my key light. And I've brought the intensity of those lights up to reduce the contrast in the background and bring that light level to roughly 1 stop darker than the brightest areas of my skin tone. Number 2, I removed the practical, again, to reduce contrast in the background. Number 3, I swapped out the kicker. You remember the kicker? Hang on, let's turn it on. There you go. That's what the kicker looked like. And I've traded it for a more direct overhead hair light. Let's see, hair light off, hair light back on. Is it doing it? Yeah. This is a small little 9-inch tube fixture. It's also set at 5600 degrees Kelvin, so same color temperature as everything else. It's at about 15% output. It's just behind my head and it's raised up to be just out of the frame. I might be overthinking this, but the kicker was an angled light. And in my mind, angled backlight is just, it's more dramatic than simple top-down hair light. This top-down light separates me a bit more from the background, and it just, again, it has less mystery. The top-down light says, I've got nothing to hide, and here I am, selling you the goods, and you can totally, completely trust me, because I've got this awesome top-down hair light. But, I don't know, it's, you know. Number 4, I have swapped out the white box in the background that was behind my head for something a little bit darker to further take advantage of the hair light and separate myself off of the background. Number 5, I changed my shirt to something darker. So while I'm removing contrast from the background, I'm trying to add contrast to the subject and try to keep the viewer focused on whatever awesome thing or idea it is that I'm selling. Typically, I do not have people, or I ask that people not wear white or black shirts, just because that's going to be an extreme, but I wanted to be extreme for this because I can. Number 6, I've had a shave and a beard trim. And lastly, I put on shorts because it is literally 91 degrees in here right now, and I was kind of dying. Bear in mind that while there are some general rules to this, ultimately all of it is subjective. And what I'm trying to do in this video is just show like a baseline starting point of a typical run-of-the-mill job, but give that specific information on the relationship between all the elements. So hopefully you can get past that theoretical approach of just watching a video about lighting and actually go set up some lights and do this and see what works and see what doesn't and see what suits your tastes and gain experience. And then from the experience, you'll get all this confidence that you can have when you're setting up this stuff in front of people that are paying you money to make images. And come to think about it, maybe that's even more important than, I talk about the one big factor that's gonna change it all. And maybe even more important than the relationship of all these things to each other is just kind of that confidence factor. So, build the confidence. Go and do. And thanks for watching.